Hi, welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over some Node-RED fundamentals. Nothing specific to the Seqera nodes here. This is just trying to get you up and running quickly with Node-RED, how it works, and some of the common usage patterns. Everything I'm going to talk about is described on the Node-RED Seqera website, so you can read through this if you prefer. Okay, I'm going to hop into Node-RED. This is running locally with Docker with everything pre-configured as mentioned in the previous video. And let's talk a little bit about what we can see. We've got a few different parts to the Node-RED interface. You've got a navigation bar along the top, sidebar left and right, and then the main canvas in the middle. The sidebars can get hidden, so if they disappear and you can't find them, just look for that little button. And basically on the left sidebar, you have all the different palette of different nodes which you can use. Seqera's at the top, it's already expanded, but you can see under common and function, there's all of these different ones which come with Node-RED. And as you add more plugins and extensions to your Node-RED installation, they will be adding new things into your palette here, so you have additional functionality. On the right-hand side, we have extra information, basically. So you've got different tabs along the top. The Info tab, the Help tab, and the Debug tab we're going to be using a lot. So you get very used to switching between them. Along the top, you've got the Info bar with the main menu. And this deploy button, which is really important, is basically like the save button. Every time we do any changes, we're going to hit deploy and make our workflows go live. Note there are different ways of deploying here, so you can specify just modified flows if you prefer, which can be a bit faster. It depends if you've got a massive installation or not. And then on the palette here, you have flows. And so this is a canvas where you draw stuff, and this thing is a flow. And you can have different tabs along the top, so I can create a new flow here. And start at scratch and go backwards and forwards between them, which helps you stay organized. Okay, sounds simple enough. How do you do it? You can just kind of drag and drop these things on. And you see these things here, those are called nodes on edges. So I can click that and I can drag them between one another. And I can drag any node edge to any other node edge. Multiple can go onto a single if you like, yeah, and then I can drag this around and it all stays attached. I can also click on it to select it and press delete, or I can click and drag and select objects like this and bulk select them and delete. And if you want to get really fancy, if you've got loads of lines you want to delete, you can hold Option and cut lines like that and they'll disappear. Okay, so that's cool. That's very simple. Another way you can quickly add a new node is you can drag out an edge onto the empty canvas and let go, and you'll get a little quick menu to select recently used nodes and things, which can be a fast way to build your workflows. Okay, one of the most important things about the Node-RED interface is over here on the info. If I make this a bit bigger, get rid of this little help text. If I click on a node, it tells me about this specific node in the info tab. And if I go to help, it tells me all about what I'm looking at, and it's contextual. So this help changes as I click around. On this particular launch workflow node, I have this help, and if I click on monitor, it changes and I get the monitor help. This is really, really helpful. You don't have to go digging around on the website. All this stuff is on the website if you need it, but you can just look at the documentation as you're building it. It tells you about all the different inputs, what they mean, all the different outputs, how it works. So this is the first place to look, and I generally keep this open basically the whole time while I'm using Node-RED. Okay, let's talk about a couple of really common, simple nodes. The nodes I find myself using most as I'm building workflows are from Node-RED. They're called Inject and Debug. These are not things you use in production workflows so much, but they're great when you're building and testing. If I drag the Inject over to Debug, I've got myself a simple little flow. By default, the Inject sends the payload of a millisecond since epoch, so it's just a timestamp, but I can set this to any different variable. Here, you can see this is a common way to select different outputs or inputs to a node. And when I do this drop down, these are all different variable types, basically. So at the moment, it's a special one called timestamp. I could also just do a simple string, which I'm going to do in this case. We have numbers, booleans, JSON. This thing is called a JSONData expression, which is basically a JSON blob that you can have variables within. And then you can also have these special variables called message, flow, and global. I'll come back to those in a minute. So I'm going to just do a simple string to going to message.payload, click done, And then on the debug, I can configure a little bit what it's going to debug. It defaults to message.payload. If I like, I can also say the complete message object. Okay, I'm ready to try it out. So I'm going to press deploy. These little blue dots tell me that this is not yet deployed, so it's not running. I've made changes since the last deployment, so I'm going to hit deploy. And off it's running. Gave me a couple of warnings, but nothing important. Now I'm going to open up the debug messages on the right hand side, and I'm hoping that when I run this, I will see a debug message. Some nodes have these special little tabs. They do different things for different nodes. With debug, it just turns it on and off, so you can easily disable and enable quickly. With inject, it actually triggers the node, which is why it's so useful, because I can actually interactively fire an event. So I click that, it fired an event from here, which passed through this connector into the debug node, and we got a debug message. Note with the debug nodes, when you hover over the messages, over here, this goes to a dotted orange line from the node that did it. So if you have multiple different nodes, I can show this if I drag out to several different nodes here and deploy. I'm going to clear these messages, click go. We've got 3 debug messages, and as I scroll over these, you can see it highlights which one they came from. Super useful. So we often put inputs, inject triggers on the start of all of our workflows and debugs on the end as we work it out. And then at the last step, we replace these with the real life event triggers. Okay, what other common nodes are there? Another really useful one is called comment. Comment doesn't do anything. It's just a way for you to document things visually. I can drag a comment node onto the canvas anywhere, double click it, and then I can write some markdown here. This is because I was doing a demo. Click done. And then when I select this comment node, you can see in the info tab, it says whatever markdown I wrote there. So it's a nice way just to add documentation as you do things. Also, as your workflows get more and more complex, you might want to group things together. And I can do that by bulk selecting some things on my canvas, and then right click and group selection. This basically just draws a little box around it, which automatically resizes as you drag things around. And if I double click it, I can give it a name, and I can also give it some color, which is kind of nice. It means you can visually separate out different groups of things in your workflows, which if they get complex, makes it much easier to see. And you can also drag the whole thing around in one go. Okay, what other common nodes are there? We also have a few here under function, which you'll probably find yourselves using quite a lot. Switch is one. If I drag this onto the canvas, I'm just going to delete everything else I was doing and also delete this flow. And I'm going to put on an eject node here. Now, I'm going to connect those two, and I'm going to set this just to send a string saying foo. And in this switch property, so I double click it or press enter, I can give it any custom name here, example. And I'm going to look at message.payload, which if you remember was the default output from the injected on. And I'm going to say if it's foo, I want it to go to output 1. I'm going to click add. If it's bar, I'm going to go to output 2. And if it's anything else, otherwise go to output 3. Press done. And now at the moment you see it's got 1 output there. When I press done, I now have 3 outputs. I can drag 3 debug nodes on here and connect those up to the different outputs. And now when I deploy this, go to the debug node, clear the previous messages. When I press go, it goes through to foo, and you can see it's gone through to the top debug message. So it's come out of this. So basically this is setting up a simple conditional. If I set this to bar now, run it again, inject. Now we've come from the middle debug node instead, so it's come out of that middle node. With all of Node-RED, when you hover over these outputs, it typically tells you what it does, which is kind of nice. So it's a very fast way to remind yourself that you're connecting to the correct output. Okay, so a switch is super common. You can see how that's going to be useful. Change is another one, which is very simple, just kind of if you need to rename a variable, basically. Here we use message.payload a lot, but maybe you want to set, I don't know, message.context, and you want to reset that to message.payload. So take the value of message.payload and set it as message.context. This is a good time to talk about those different variable types. Message is the kind of object that gets passed around the different event flow. So every event that goes through has a message object, and you can set whatever keys you like on that. Payload is the most common one that's often the default input for many things, but you can create all different ones. And you'll see that the Seqera nodes have some different presets, both for inputs and outputs. Flow and global are very similar. They're basically different levels of scope. So the flow variables are designed to be at this whole level of this different flow, and globals are globals for all of Node-RED. On the whole, you don't need to use these very often, but they can be useful. Then you've got different variable types, so string, number, boolean, and then we have JSON, which is just a raw JSON. You can click the 3 dots here to open up an editor to make it easier to read. And it has a visual editor as well if you want to inspect it. And then there's also JSONData here, where it's exactly the same, but I can put in variables here, and you can also even test it. And then finally, you can have environment variables if you have those in your environment. Okay, so that's useful, just simple little kind of renaming one. And then the last one I'm going to show is the kind of escape hatch, where if you've tried to set up your setup in Node-RED, but you just need that little bit more complexity, this is where the code comes in for the low code platform. And if I double click this, you can see I just have basically a JavaScript editor, and I can write whatever JavaScript I like in here. I can use the message object again, so I can say if message.payload equals foo, then return message. Else return null. For example, very, very simple. And then you can imagine if I delete all of these and wire this up to this inject, at the moment it's saying bar. If I do debug, then it should give me null. Yeah, so I've got no debug output because it outputted null. And if I set this to foo, then I've got the output here. So you can see this is just arbitrary JavaScript. Worth remembering that if you're not super happy with JavaScript, then LLMs such as Seqera AI and Claude and ChatGPT are very, very good at writing this. So just keep that in mind. Okay, final little thing to talk about on that note is LLMs and the fact that you can get everything you build in Node-RED in and out very easily as a JSON representation. So if I right click just anywhere on the canvas here, there's an option for export, and I can export specific things, or what I usually click is JSON. This is a JSON representation of this entire flow here, and I can copy it to the clipboard very easily, and I can dump that into Claude, and I can say, this isn't doing what I was expecting, can you help me fix it? And Claude is very good at writing out fixed or different JSON. I can then right click on the canvas again, insert and import, or you can see I just do Command I, and then I can just paste that JSON which was given to me by the LLM and click import. And if I just do that quickly, I can copy the JSON I have already and just import it again. Hit import, it's going to tell me that I already have those nodes and I've copied it into a new flow up here. Super, super easy. So it's really, really useful way to share what you've done and get help with LLMs or with other people. Okay, finally, I'm going to show you how to import examples, not from a clipboard, but from the Seqera plugin. So again, if I go to insert, import, same modal, I can get to this through the burger menu up here, by the way, as well. So I can also go here, import. I can go to examples instead of clipboard. And you can see here, there's different examples that come both with Node-RED itself and also the plugins that you have installed. So under the Seqera plugin, you can see there's a bunch of different examples we've written for you here, which can give you a starting point. So if I click the first one, Click import, you can see it brings in a new flow for me up at the top, and it's everything basically set up, pretty much ready to go. You can see the blue dots mean it hasn't been deployed yet, and sometimes you'll see this little red triangle, which tells you that there's something wrong, basically. In this case, I haven't finished setting up these nodes. I need to set up a configuration. So if I double click on it, and you can see I've got a red line around this box because it's required and I haven't yet configured it. We'll do that in the next one. Great. That's it for now. Hopefully you've got a feeling for how Node-RED works, what the interface does, and you'll be ready to start building your own flows. See you in the next video.